welcome back, Manny with My Hectic Life Pets, where we talk about all things pet and pet related. And today we're going over some of the common types of algae that you're gonna find in your aquarium and what you can do to get rid of it. So the first one is that lovely brown algae, also known as Diatom algae. So this type of algae can have sort of a dusty, nasty, brown look to it, and it can leave your aquarium looking really filthy. Now, Diatom algae typically is found in newly started aquariums, and a lot of times this may indicate that you have high phosphates in your aquarium. Now, this type of algae can tend to grow pretty quickly in a tank. So to get rid of Diatom algae, you're gonna wanna make sure that you wipe all the sides of the tank, take care of cleaning any ornaments, and then you want to do your gravel vacuuming, because basically you're gonna be wanting to remove the Diatom algae as much as possible from the aquarium after you have cleaned the sides of the tank. Because if you don't really remove a lot of the Diatom algae from the water, then when you come back the next morning, you're gonna see brown again. Now let's talk about green hair algae. Green hair algae can be a nightmare to try to get rid of and get under control. This one is found quite commonly in planted aquariums, and if not dealt with, can suffocate a tank. Now, this type of algae usually forms little clumps of hair-like threads throughout the tank. While it's not hard to remove the hair algae that you find in the tank, you really have to get rid of the root cause, or you will keep continuing to find more and more hair algae in the tank. Now, this one is a little bit more complicated when you're trying to deal with it, because it's kind of a balancing act. The biggest reason why this will typically appear in your planted aquarium is that you don't have a balance of how long you're running your lights with how much you're dosing of CO2. So basically what you're gonna have to do is figure out how long you can run your lights and how much CO2. And of course, you don't want to overdose on CO2 in your tank, because you will wipe out your fish. Now, every tank is different. Some people have more plants than others, and some plants require higher lighting and things like that than others. So I know I personally run my tank lights about 6 to 8 hours a day. Any more than 8 hours a day and I end up with some form of algae. So you might have to do a little bit of homework and research on just how much CO2 and how much you need to run your lights for the specific plants that you keep. But typically, if you are seeing this type of algae in your tank, scrubbing down your tank and then doing a good water change, along with cutting back on how long you're running your lights for and possibly upping your CO2 dosage, should help get this algae problem under control. You wake up in the morning and your water in your tank looks green. This is a floating type of algae that is actually a single-celled form of algae that will spread through your tank like wildfire. Now, this is another type of algae that is typically found in tanks with low circulation, so your low flow filters. So if you do have fish that can handle upping the filtration, upping the circulation in the tank, then by all means either turn the flow up or get a higher power filter. Now, adding a skimmer to your tank can usually help to resolve this, along with adding UV sterilizers. Now, barring that, doing additional water changes and cutting back on how much you're feeding your fish usually will help resolve this. Now let's talk about green spot algae. This is usually seen as a dark green color algae that tends to hang around on your glass and possibly some of your ornaments. This type of algae tends to be a little bit harder to scrub off. A lot of times you will have to use some type of bladed scraper. But make sure you're very careful if you have an acrylic tank, as they can scratch so easily. So if you are doing an acrylic tank, you will probably want to use a plastic bladed scraper. Now, typically this type of algae is more of a light issue, so cutting back on how long you are running your lights, along with doing a couple additional water changes, should usually help you out with getting rid of this type of algae. Next, let's talk about green dust algae. This type of algae tends to look similar to regular green algae, but you wipe it off And then an hour later you come to check out your tank and it's back. This is a free swimming type of algae, so basically when you wipe it down, it's swimming in your tank and then it readheres back to its original location. So unfortunately with this type of algae, you pretty much have to let it settle, grow, deal with an ugly tank for a few weeks, and then remove all of the grown out algae so that you can actually pull it out of your tank permanently. And then we have black brush algae. This type of algae can also be a headache. This type of algae tends to grow in dark patches on ornaments and your filtration. To remove black algae from your tank, you pretty much have to take out all your ornaments and any equipment that it has formed on and bleach them before re-adding them back to the tank. Now let's talk about water surface algae. Just like the name would imply, this is algae that you're gonna find floating at the top of your tank. Now adding things like a skimmer to the tank can help to get rid of that problem. This is another one that is typically found on tanks with low filtration or low water flow. So again, if you do have fish that can deal with higher filtration, higher water flow, then you can switch out your filter or up the flow of circulation in the tank. But if that is not an option, doing more frequent water changes can help to eliminate this type of algae. Now with all these types of algae out there, a lot of times a big help can be adding live plants and types of algae eaters into your aquarium. Now, not all algae eaters are created equally, and some of them get huge. So you want to make sure that if you do pick out an algae eater, you pick one that helps with the types of algae that you keep encountering, as well as is not going to be too big for your aquarium. So you want to take care to find the algae eater that is right for the job and right for the tank size. Live plants can be added to your aquarium to help feed on the nitrates, which is the same food source that most algae use as well. So the live plants with the proper amount of CO2 and lighting should outcompete the algae. So I really hope that this helps to cut down on the algae in your aquariums. And if you out there have any tips or tricks on how you help to keep your algae under control, please feel free to post those in the comment section below. Okay, so that's all for today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!